say hello to everyone. And I'd like to say that a bit of nervousness is quite normal at this stage of this competition. But with not much further ado, I'd like to invite Avram Stefan with Searches to be the first speaker.
All of us complain, don't we? All of us, at some point in our lives, have the impression that this world is so mean, so dangerous, so rough and tough, that any step we took in the wrong direction could have resembled the ending of our survival. And so, complaining became a part of our identity. And nowadays, we use it to bond with other people through our misery. We do not realize that this is making our lives way harder than they should be. But that's because most of you don't know the story of George. Now, George was by far the most cynical person you could ever meet, and for good reasons. He was sick, he was living under a corrupt political regime, his financial status was disappointing, he saw life as the hardest exam, and he hated every happy person around him, thinking they were hypocrites in a world where complaining about your problems should have been, in his vision, the main objective. So the universe acted against George, and one day he was walking in the park. The sun was bright, children were playing, people were having fun. And all George could say about that was, "My God, this is such an ugly world." A small child bumped into him by accident. And yet again he said, "My God, this is such an ugly world." A beautiful girl smiled in his direction. And yet again he said, "My God, this is such an ugly world." Suddenly he realized that colors were slowly fading away in the corners of his eyes until all that remained was darkness. That day, George became blind, permanently blind, and the only thing he could see was the extent of his own ignorance. The next words that came out of his mouth were, "My God, this was such a beautiful world." George was a guy in a story he refused to win because he chose to cover up his objective in a layer of thick pessimism. He gave himself the impression that there was no room for success. And that sounds more than familiar to me, because just a few years ago, I was facing a life-changing situation that almost turned for the worse. It was about a very important argument I had with a person I loved, where I was forced to admit some painful things in order to make her see my version of events. Somehow, exactly like George, I chose to cover my objective in a layer of pessimism and sarcastic jokes. Why? Because I saw people do the exact same thing on a daily basis, and I thought that if the entire world was acting like an unstable teenager, then how am I supposed to be different? To succeed. Was that a good justification? No, it wasn't. The only thing that got me out of that trap was my stubbornness. But the question is, was everybody as lucky as I was? I think all of us know George, and to some extent even understand him, because at some point in our lives, we were that man. We were the ones left hanging over problems too great to be surpassed without sweat and scars. When we asked how, we were told to figure it out for ourselves. When we asked why, we were forced to survive on the explanation that life just does that to you sometimes. Some of us survived. Others were forced to come up with a coping mechanism. And so we began complaining about wars, poverty, diseases, teenagers, all of those global imperfections that the media just loves feeding to its followers. So my mission is to make George shut up. Of course, we live in a world that is far from perfect, but we are getting better and better at fixing every negative aspect concerning the human race. Factually speaking, and I repeat, factually speaking, we are closing in on world peace. Worldwide poverty is dropping at a shocking rate. Our tolerance towards the people around us is increasing by the minute, and we are all living longer and better lives. Both together and apart, we are godly beings that instinctually try to do good. And every day, we fix a small portion of our problems And every day, we make this world look more and more like an earthly heaven. My brothers and sisters, where we are going, there is no room for complaint and cynicism as much as there is no room for problems without solutions and explanations. There is no question that we will go forth, fueled by success and happiness, into a new era. So let it be clear that we are not falling, and we will not fall. Pain will always be remembered, but we should never let it overtake who we are and who we must become. Thank you.
You said in your speech that stubbornness took you out of the trap you were into. Can stubbornness keep you in that trap as well?
Well, of course it can, but it depends on how you take it. I see my stubbornness as something constructive. In this situation, of course, it helped me very much, but obviously it depends on, it's very subjective. For somebody, stubbornness can be the downfall.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Other questions, please?
You talk about doing something to make the world a better place, a more positive place. I'm wondering, let's say in the last month or in a period more recent, what's something that you have done personally to make the world a better place?
Thank you for the question. That's the amazing thing about us. That's the amazing thing about humans. We don't need to actually think that we do something. Of course, I may say that I volunteered, and I do go to about 2 centers to volunteer for children, for orphan children, of course. But that is not the point. We as humans almost subconsciously do something to help every day. Just because we go to work, just because we plant a smile on somebody's face due to our simple actions, that can make a change. If somebody in this room smiles to somebody else, that somebody else may be inspired by that smile. That somebody else may do something great based on that smile. So our contribution is almost continuous.
And what if some of us are like George and the smile doesn't affect us in a positive way? What would be your contribution to a better world?
Well, a better world in the case of George would be to sit down and just discuss. To discuss his problems, to see exactly why he thinks this, and to make him believe, to make a speech in order to make him believe that there is no room for cynicism, there is no room for complaint.
Thank you very much.